Welcome, Seeker. Step into the shadows with me for just a moment. Today, we're not just reviewing data or skimming through facts, we're actually unlocking an ancient Gothic fable of the mind in this explainer. I'm going to serve as your guide, maybe even your mentor in the occult arts of perception, if you'll let me, as we explore the transmutation of reality and this incredible concept of the world as text. We're going to uncover how your deepest, darkest personal suffering isn't some permanent stain on your soul. It's actually the raw, unrefined poetic material you need to craft an absolute masterpiece. If you've ever felt completely crushed by the literal weight of existence, well, prepare yourself. We are about to learn the dark alchemy of turning that crushing weight into art. Let's begin our descent.
Listen closely. I want you to picture sitting alone in this cavernous, dimly lit Gothic study. The heavy silence of profound abstract thought is suddenly shattered by a low, rhythmic scratching at the door. Scratch. Scratch, scratch. This visceral, auditory anchor immediately yanks our protagonist, the Wanderer, right out of intellectual isolation and plunges him into immediate physical suspense. You see, the Wanderer is trapped by what we call the error of enclosure. He didn't fall from grace because of some classic, fiery sin. No, his tragedy is born of pure exhaustion. He sought stasis. He was desperately searching for a single, unmoving, static word to permanently lock out the terrifying chaos of life. He literally wants reality to stand perfectly still. But as that relentless scratching reminds us, the world outside is always moving, and it is always knocking.
Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is scratching at the door? Well, it appears to be a mere stray poodle. But notice the brilliant paradox here. We call this the honest witness. The creature isn't actually lying about its dark, towering nature. Rather, the Wanderer's own rational blindness sanitizes the threat. He's so incredibly tired of the turbulent, dizzying heights of spiritual seeking that he projects harmlessness onto a very dangerous entity. He desperately wants it to be a pet because he craves comfort. But comfort, as we're going to see, is the ultimate enemy of transmutation.
That brings us to Section 1, Reality as Living Text, The Awakening. To escape this self-imposed prison of static isolation, our wanderer has to undergo a fundamental shift in perception. As an apprentice of life, you have to learn that reality is not some divine, literal commandment carved in stone, demanding your blind obedience. It's something much more malleable, and honestly, much more mysterious. Consider this dark, magical turning point, a true philological maxim. All that is transitory is only a symbol. This single sentence holds the absolute power to strip the material world of its literal crushing weight. When you look at the mountains, the cities, the valleys, and even the physical walls of your own life through this lens, they cease to be heavy, static possessions or impassable roadblocks. They become temporary markers. They're symbols pointing toward a grander spiritual evolution. The world isn't a cage, you see. It's a living, shifting text, just waiting for you to read it.
To read this text, you have to become what is known as the tragic philologist. They don't just passively endure life, they actively interpret it. They treat the physical world as a shifting text, viewing all earthly environments as mere temporary markers on a vast journey. Crucially, they flat out refuse to read the universe as a rigid divine commandment. When the friction of existence burns them, they don't fall into despair. They analyze that friction, they interpret it, and they reshape it. By refusing to be crushed by the literal meaning of their suffering, they reclaim their life, transforming the whole shebang into a self-directed masterpiece.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, The Alchemy of Suffering, Repurposing the Past. This is where the true dark alchemy begins.
So, how do we deal with our mortal insufficiency? How do we handle the crushing regrets of our past errors? Well, the answer lies in the etymological untangling of your own personal history. Consider the literal weight of existence most people carry around, weighed down by eternal ledgers of past guilt, chained to static possessions, and just absolutely broken by crushing exhaustion. In that state, every mistake feels like a permanent failure. But through the transmutation of reality, we shift over to the symbolic text. Those exact same errors and that exact same guilt, they are no longer permanent stains. They become raw, poetic metaphors. They become philological roots that you can dynamically repurpose to fuel your own spiritual evolution. You aren't erasing your past. You're translating it into something immensely powerful.
The ultimate triumph over human frailty is recognizing this one absolute truth. Radical limitations become a monumental aesthetic necessity. The fact that your mortal frame is insufficient, that you are flawed, weak, and limited, it is not a curse. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. It is the vital, absolutely necessary resistance against which your sovereign will must push. Think of a sculptor. A sculptor cannot carve a masterpiece out of thin air, right? They need the heavy, stubborn resistance of marble. Your limitations, your suffering, they are the marble. They are aesthetically necessary for you to sculpt your own monumental, sovereign meaning.
Let's step into Section 3, the architect of negation, the friction of shadows. But what of the shadowy forces entirely opposed to our growth? Let's go back to that scratching at the door.
It's super easy to view the dark, destructive forces in our lives as cosmic enemies just aiming to destroy us. But the tragic philologist knows the architect of negation is actually a functional gear within the grand text of life. This towering shadow doesn't exist simply to annihilate you. It exists to provide the essential friction. It offers the very threads of temptation that are absolutely required for your spiritual and intellectual development. Without this shadow, there is literally no depth to your light. The towering, fluid shadow of unmeasured reality, with all of its chaotic, terrifying potential, is actually offering you poetic metaphors to be untangled. And remember, the wanderer in our fable? That's you. That towering shadow, whether it's a profound personal failure, a devastating heartbreak, or a crushing career setback, is providing the exact raw materials you need to master your art. The darkness is a catalyst. When you face this negation head-on and untangle its meaning, you force the unfolding of a higher, creative deed. Your darkest antagonist is actually your greatest unseen collaborator.
And finally, we arrive at Section 4, the triumphant fluid dance, the sovereign resolution. The heavy, static walls of the steady dissolve, and we hit our ultimate climax. Here, passive, frightened thought is entirely abandoned. It's replaced by a joyous, mystical affirmation of existence in all its terrifying beauty. Let's trace the trajectory of this breathtaking spiritual evolution. In the past, the wanderer existed in a state of exile and trial, wandering the intellectual wastes as a homeless phantom, heavily burdened by literal weight. In the present, the active work begins, the dark alchemy of transmuting agony, error, and friction into beautiful structural aesthetic components. And the trajectory points directly toward eternity, not some mythical place in the clouds, but a state of being, where the individual ultimately becomes a self-contained work of art. And what exactly does this self-contained work of art do? It joins the cosmic symphony. The enlightened seeker completely abandons the desperate search for a static, unmoving destination. The agonizing friction of life isn't escaped, it is distilled into a grand cosmic song. The seeker engages in a triumphant, fluid dance with the universe itself. By acting as the tragic philologist, reading the world as text and molding suffering into poetry, they justify their very existence through the pure act of creative transmutation. Life is no longer a punishment to endure, it's a canvas to conquer.
Which leaves us here, right back at the threshold of your own dark study. We've seen how the wanderer turns a terrifying threat into a cosmic dance. So I have to ask you, how will you untangle the poetic metaphors of your own suffering to compose your life's grand text? The raw material is already yours. The friction is already present in your life. The only thing left is for you to begin the work. Keep reading the symbols around you.